Welcome back to our live Thursday show. Some things don't change. Evening, James. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah,
Happy New Year to you as well.
Yes, good to be here. And some things don't change. Jon Newsome. Some things don't change. Rob Staton of BBC Radio Sheffield. And we're trying to make sense of the football scene, and we were in the first half. So any input from you, James, is gratefully appreciated.
Well, absolutely. I mean, what I will say is, and go straight in, throw the gauntlet down straight away. I was saying before the show to yourselves, bring it on air. Open myself to a bit of abuse. I was saying, I might be completely wrong here.
I'm not. What's he going to say?
The biggest investment I think that Sheffield Wednesday can make is to try and get as many players off the wage bill by paying them off. Because
I'm not. Yeah.
Because
the size of the contract means that it's
Absolutely.
not good business. You can't do it.
No.
But I mean, there's some on the fringe that clearly need to go. And Lewis McGugan was paid off, wasn't he? And he's been released by Northampton
he didn't
Town.
last long there, yeah.
No. What a waster! What a waste of talent that boy.
Absolutely,
John.
Yeah, absolutely. It just
It's tragedy, really.
Shows you the modern day, isn't it? Money kills it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you're not right, if you're not focused, and you can soon take your eye off the ball, and all of a sudden you get a bad name for yourself.
Yeah. Talking of that, Niall Ranger was released today by Southend. I'm just amazed that another club had given him an opportunity.
I forgot he was playing.
Me too. There'll be somebody else along in a minute. It's incredible. But it's about ability. I'm not saying there's any comparison between him and Lewis McGugan. With Lewis McGugan, it just seems like not being prepared to buckle down and work at the game, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And
great talent.
Football's such a small family, isn't it? The word gets around. Managers talk, coaches talk, agents talk. It doesn't take you long to get that reputation.
No. Well, let's talk. Talking about reputation, there was a key appointment by Sheffield Wednesday over the holiday period, and I'm determined, for one journalist, and I'm sure most of the others on this patch, not to prejudge or have any prejudice about this, because that's the most dangerous thing you can do, and any supporter can do as well, because what the situation at one club may be totally different at another. However, Sheffield Wednesday appointed Katrian Meir, the former chief executive of Charlton Athletic, who had let's just say an eventful time in the job there. The club went from the Championship down to League One. There was a lot of supporter unrest. I think they got through 8 managers in 4 years or thereabouts.
Throwing things on the pitch in
that time.
And stuff, yeah.
So you can understand that the reaction wasn't exactly welcoming. However, Rob, like I say at the start, you do actually have to reserve. Well, John, I'll bring you in to start with. You can't compare one club with another for a start, can you, necessarily?
No.
And what the brief was. What brief was she working on?
You don't know what her remit was at Charlton, and you don't know what her remit is coming into Sheffield Wednesday. And I'm like you. I just think you've got to reserve judgment and see what happens. You've got to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, and it's a clean slate, and you start again.
Everybody learns from mistakes, and if it's fair to assume she made mistakes, like we all do there, then she'll have done a lot of learning, you presume, which will hopefully stand in good stead for your next job.
You'd like to think so, but again, you don't know. Has she been brought in to be, part of the football side of it, or just the business side of it?
The business side, I believe.
So
I don't think she'll be much involved in football.
Like I say, I think you've just got to give her the opportunity to find her feet and make her decisions, and then take it from there.
What's your take, Rob?
Well, I know that she'll have been aware of what the reaction will have been to her appointment, and I think one thing you've got to remember here is the customers thing. She referred to the fans at Charlton as customers, which was the most controversial headline that she made. You've got to remember she was speaking at a business conference there. That wasn't like at a fans forum where she just said you are all customers. She was speaking at a business conference, referring to. And it's not great, it's still a bad headline, but a bit of perspective is maybe required there. And the other thing you've got to remember is the owners at Charlton were incredibly unpopular. She tended to be the face of the ownership group, in that she was often the one talking or reacting or or
she was out front
statements.
for them, wasn't she?
So she was almost the person that the fans could point a finger at. That's not an excuse, because I don't really know that much about Charlton Athletic and what she did there.
Me. And a little knowledge is a dangerous thing in terms of criticising.
I think you've got to give her at least an opportunity to come to Hillsborough. She's in the job now, so let's see what she can do.
Yeah, absolutely. My take as well. Managerially, we spoke about some of the candidates, including Gus Poyet, and I think the job he did at Brighton, and I know he had a short spell at Sunderland, and maybe that didn't go particularly well, but then again, which Sunderland manager has it gone well for lately? Simon Grayson's another one. So I think Gus Poyet would be a very credible character. I know we were talking about British managers. He's almost become British, hasn't he?
He's certainly a character. I mean, his managerial style is interesting. He would be different, but he knows the Championship, and he's managed not just in the Premier League, but in lower divisions as well. So he would be interested, I'm sure.
Younger managers who've sort of worked their way up. I mean, Dean Smith at Brentford gets a shout. Paul Hurst doing a fantastic job at Shrewsbury with some affinity to.
The thing is, isn't timing the most important thing? Like when Steve Bruce left Hull City, he was the ideal candidate for me. You know, someone who could, if Wednesday were going to have a vacancy and a new manager coming in, Steve Bruce ticked nearly every box in terms of his experience, his character, what he's done in the game, promotion winning. And if he was available now and he wasn't at Aston Villa, it would be a pretty easy choice to go after him and pursue him. But he's at Aston Villa now. And Gary Rowett, when he was free, would have been another option. And what a job he's doing at Derby. He's now at Derby County. So timing is often the most important thing. And maybe a year ago, some of the options would have been a bit better than they are right now.
Yeah, so which brings into play that the feeling that this appointment is for the future, not necessarily this season. You trust that Wednesday will stay up. They're most unlikely to get into the playoffs now. Maybe there has to be an acceptance of that, do you think, Rob? That's just a step too far? And we're
Sheffield Wednesday are not going to win promotion this year, barring the most incredible turnaround. Is there like 20 games to go?
There's a clip of, that's just 5-second clip there. Of Rob, that we're gonna just clip that off.
Yeah.
If I have the technology,
I think you'll be fairly safe there, Rob.
Yeah, I do too.
Let's hope we're all sat here in May, looking back on that clip with great hilarity, and both Sheffield clubs have got promoted. But it's not going to happen.
I agree with you, mate.
They've given up too much ground. Yeah. I think it does have to be about preparing for next season. There's enough talent in the squad where they can have a bounce back year next year. Work in January to get some new players in, maybe mix around the squad as you've talked about there, Alan, and think about what you want to do next season. But I think that's what it has to be now.
So if that's the case, and the conditions aren't ideal to get the absolute best appointment you can make as manager now, does it make sense to say to Lee Bullen, OK, you run with it till the end of the season? What do you think? As an option?
Before the Burton game, I would have said that was probably an option, but
supposing he goes and wins the Sheffield Derby. Suppose he's still.
I don't think it's so much. I don't think it's so much as the actual game. I just think it's. I think it's very, very difficult when you go in as an interim manager. And I said after the Burton game that. What does he do after that game? They've got beat 3-0. He's devastated. He wants to go and he wants to give them a rocket.
I'm glad he did publicly as well.
But how many of the players will take that rocket on board? You know, they've not given him a performance at all. I'm sure some of them would have probably rolled their eyes and thought, you know, somebody else will be in.
He doesn't have the authority.
You know what I mean? And I just find it really, really. I think he's put in a really difficult position.
Another aspect of that is I noticed plenty of fans saying, "Oh, how can you not criticise Lee Bullen? He was part of what Carlos Carvalho was doing." But number one and number two are completely different roles.
And you've got to remember there was, I think, 5 members of coaching staff that Carlos Carvalho had there who had come with him from Portugal. So, you know, how much influence are you going to do if you've got, you know, 5 staff? Carvalho, a goalkeeping coach, Lee Bullen, you know, who exactly is responsible for the style of play and for underachieving this year? I think it'd be pretty harsh to point the finger at Lee Bullen for that.
Well, I'm sure that judging by his selection at Nottingham Forest, there was probably plenty that Lee, as a loyal man, privately disagreed with in the way that they were set up and the way they played. He had an opportunity to change it, which he did in that first match.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think Adam Reach sort of inferred a little bit after the game that, you know, it'd be nice to listen to see what Lee Bullen's got and he can give his points and get his points across now that he's got the opportunity, and he sort of, you know, mentioned it a little bit. And I think you're right in what you say. I don't think he did have a major input in what Carlos Carvalho did.
No. Carlos had a good record overall, and we all thank him for the enjoyable times that we had. A great guy as well. Really enjoyed his company, as we did in the studio a couple of times. To come, a couple of names to throw at you guys in the way of the transfer window in Sheffield United and what we think might happen. Meantime, loads else.
Away from sort of all the off-the-field stuff, we'll look at the on-the-field stuff. A bit of respite, perhaps. FA Cup weekend coming up. Blades away at Ipswich. The Owls make the trip to Carlisle as well before the big derby next week. We'll be previewing that right here on the programme. Talk non-league, Sheffield FC. They've got a bit of work to do. Just 1 point above the relegation zone. They've slid, haven't they?
They
really
certainly
slid.
have. Yeah, they've gone through a couple of managers this season, haven't they? They've had more than one anyway.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
Again, off-the-field stuff needs sort of sorting out, I think.
Yeah,
they had a
maybe.
good win on New Year's Day, though, at Stocksbridge, no less, as well, local derby. Saturday sees them playing Spalding United at home. Big few months ahead, and a big few months ahead for Hallam as well. They're 9th in their table, and they're at home at Sandygate to Shirebrook. So if you don't fancy going to Ipswich or Carlisle, plenty of local football in the area as well from Hallam and Sheffield FC.
Quite attractive as opposed to going to Carlisle.
I think so, and Ipswich is a long slog, isn't it? Sheffield Sharks in basketball out of the cup. They lost the last time out as well, looking for reaction then away at the London Lions on Sunday. In ice hockey, Sheffield Steelers, they've got a double header against the Belfast Giants this weekend. Still some tickets available. After a superb win against Manchester to start the new year on New Year's Day, actually. Have a look at an irate David Sims column in the Sheffield Telegraph as well. Talks about a prank that was played on them, and it sort of did the team talk for them.
I've not read that yet. He's always entertaining, isn't he?
Very good
and
article.
And often irate as well.
Yeah,
often.
He's always got a point to make, and it's very particularly good this week, so do check that one out. Yeah, definitely, actually. Yeah, definitely get him back in. Rugby Union, National 2 North. Sheffield Tigers, they've actually lost 6 matches in a row, including the local derby on the 30th of December to Sheffield Rugby Club at Abbeydale. Massive game, big turnout. I had lots of friends there watching that one. Still in 9th position, though, remarkably. And they've got a tough match versus Sale this weekend at home at Dormoor. Sheffield, though, they're off the bottom of the table, first time this whole season, and they're away at Stourbridge this weekend. And a bit of news about the Sheffield Eagles, finally, to bring you. They're on course to move back to Sheffield for the start of the new championship season. They're moving back to the Olympic Legacy Park. They've played in Doncaster, they've played in Wakefield, they've had low attendances, they've been moving around. Doesn't really feel like a Sheffield team, but they've been given a helping hand as well today. The RFL, they've said that they can play their first 4 matches of the season away from home. So the first match at home will be against the London Broncos. Fingers crossed, hopefully at the Olympic Legacy Park. So there we go. Alan Biggs is sending a tweet mid-programme.
I am. So
I'll take the reins, shall I, for a minute?
Yes, I would. You take the reins for a minute. I think that Rob and I have something to discuss in terms of the managerial position. Maybe
Look at this. It's like being sat with 2 millennials. They're both sat on their phones. It's like, what's going on here?
We're going to take an Instagram of this in a bit, and we'll post that on there.
Hashtag
Facebook Live, maybe.
Come on then. What's the news that you need to do?
I think that there's a potential name that we should talk about in the managerial speculation that we talked about. As maybe another name that we can throw in.
Yeah.
That we can throw in. At Hillsborough, and I'm not quite sure of the pronunciation, but he's a German.
Okay.
I think he's a Dutch manager who has managed in Germany. Jos Luhukay, I think is
Jos Luhukay, yeah. A Dutch manager managing in Germany. Linked, I think it's fair to say, with the job at Hillsborough. I think we can throw him in with all the other names as a potential.
Which would be interesting. Look, I think that
that's hot gossip, folks. Hot gossip.
There has been some success with managers from the continent coming to England. Wagner at Huddersfield being the best example of that. Carlos Carvalho. I know people think of Carlos's time at Sheffield Wednesday. They think about what has happened this year. But he got to the Wednesday to the playoffs twice, and within a game at Wembley and a penalty shootout of getting back there. So there are managers who have come in and have had success and have new ideas, and maybe this is another one who's going to come in and do that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, James. Why don't you Google this?
Okay,
fella?
I'll do that.
Yeah, and we'll discuss him further because he could be a candidate for the job. And as with Carlos Carvalho, when we were talking about a left field appointment, you know, there's always been this possibility that Sheffield Wednesday could come up with a name that wasn't particularly widely known, hasn't there?
Yes, and I think that, you know, if you spoke to most supporters, they would probably say the same thing. You know, anything really could have, if it was a Paul Lambert type, you wouldn't have been too surprised. But another manager on the continent as well. You know, this has been, I think it was always going to be a wide search for Sheffield Wednesdays. They looked for someone to replace a coach who's been at Hillsborough for 2.5 years, and as I mentioned, they had some success the last 2 seasons. You know, I'm sure that they'll have looked at, you know, not just at closer to home for British managers that we've talked about today, but also at managers on the continent like this.
And sometimes it shows our ignorance in this country, doesn't it? Because Carlos Carvalho came along and we all said, who? But in fact, he'd managed a couple of very big clubs, and maybe we should know a little bit more than we do about the game on the continent, John. Not you personally.
Yeah, possibly. I mean,
all of us.
I mean,
Bring you in a minute.
Mr. Chansiri is not going to be averse to looking abroad, is he? Because you know, like Rob's just said, in the first 2 seasons there was a relative success, especially getting to Wembley, and so he's not going to be averse to that. Who's to know? Who's to know what's going? You know, we're all second guessing, aren't we? But you know, that's the one thing about Mr. Chansiri that he can say. He's very, very difficult to read, isn't he? And
he certainly is. I mean, names keep coming up for this. So,
Yeah.
James, tell us a bit about the background of this latest one to be linked.
Yeah, so he's, I mean, not much of a playing career from what I can say. You know, this is just off this sort of 2 minutes worth of research that I've done. Not much of a playing career. Retired from playing for SV Strahlen and then straight into the managerial post when the manager got sacked. He was obviously a senior player. He's had a couple of spells as assistant coach at FC Cologne in Germany, and then he's managed Borussia Mönchengladbach in the Bundesliga, didn't end well. Augsburg, Hertha Berlin, didn't end well either there. That was a 3-year stint. Then he's actually not been in management since he managed Stuttgart 2 years ago. So.
Right.
There are similarities to Carlos Carvalho.
Correct.
Yes.
In that Carlos had managed a lot of big clubs, Sporting Lisbon and Besiktas and teams like that. And when you talk about the likes of Stuttgart and Borussia Mönchengladbach, you know, there are some, and Köln as well, who's managed. You know, there are some big clubs there, some big experience, so some similarities
And
there.
he's had a couple of spells as assistants as well, from what it looks like, and you know, working under coaches. Maybe he's picked up a few ideas and he's sort of going for it a bit himself.
Yeah,
you don't know. Obviously, just looking at a Wikipedia page essentially, but it's, you know, it sort of tells its own story quite often when you look down the statistics and the clubs that they've been at, doesn't it? So, and if you look down Carlos Carvalho's, like Rob says, when we did that, you know, you look at all these clubs and it's one season, but it's who he's worked under and worked with and what he's seen and what situations they've been in. You don't know what they're going to bring to the table.
No, I think if it works as well as Carlos Carvalho's appointment, it'd be a very good appointment indeed, because that almost ended up taking the club to the Premier League.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, there's not sort of the standout. You know, like I said, if Steve Bruce was a free agent right now, it would make a lot of sense to go and appoint somebody like that. That type of manager is not available out there, so you have to cast a wide net and you have to look at some other options.
There isn't an absolute screaming British option, isn't it, that says you must go for this guy?
I think a lot of Wednesday fans, though, the names that you see predominantly on Twitter bandied around are Dean Smith, probably not going to leave Brentford. He's sort of got his own thing going on there, and Paul Hurst. And Paul Hurst, I think it seems to me like that's the closest thing that Sheffield Wednesday fans have to a Chris Wilder kind of, with the affinity to the club and, you know, all that kind of stuff, doesn't it? Lower league doing well.
Yeah, Dean Smith's unlikely to happen. It always has been a bit unlikely, I believe. And, you know, with Hurst, obviously he's from the region, understands football around here, has done an unbelievable job at Shrewsbury. It kind of feels like you've got used to Shrewsbury being up at the top of League One and forget just how far they've come since
he started the season winning like 8 games, and it was like, what on earth's going on here, isn't it? Yeah. So.
Okay, we'll come back to Sheffield United. It's amazing. Rob and I have got many sources in football, and you're getting messages from people all the time, aren't you? As a sort of, you roll over with names, and then suddenly another name comes up, and it happened live on the show. Whether it proves to be the right one or not, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to do another hour. Yeah.
We'll have to do another hour. Yes. Sheffield United and the transfer window. We know about Ryan Leonard, and that's been going on an awful long time. Chris Wilder would appear to have set another deadline today of early next week or he's going to move on elsewhere. How do you read that one?
I really like Ryan Leonard. Whenever I must have seen, whenever he's played well, I know that some people, I think at the New York Stadium when Southend got battered there, people said he didn't look anything special. I think I must have seen every good game he's had then, because he's always looked really good when I've seen him. United clearly want him, but Southend seem to be doing what a lot of teams do, you know, trying to hold out for the best offer, trying to maximise everything they get there. But I just wonder whether or not the end game's a little bit close now. United are either going to go, look, we've gone over this too many times now. We're either going to park it and move on, or they're going to bring him in.
Yeah. And is there anybody else at the table for Leonard? If United are the most persistent and offering the most money, then I think they'll get him. You'd think. The other one that's intriguing, a target that slipped the net previously in the last transfer window, was Devante Cole, a striker from Fleetwood, who did very well when he was at Barnsley. You can see the obvious attraction, and I was attracted this week to see the news that Paddy Madden had gone from Scunthorpe to Fleetwood, and I wondered whether that might enable Sheffield United
and
to
he's something a bit different to what they've got as well, so he provides a different option, whether it's to come off the bench or to occasionally start the odd game. Has got a lot of potential, liked him at Barnsley, and I just wonder what else they might look at. I mean, obviously the Paul Coots injuries created a need then. I know a lot of teams in the Championship are looking at Clayton at Middlesbrough, and he might be somebody that United will monitor as well.
Yes, midfield I think is big for Chris Wilder.
Having said that, John Lundstrom, you know, he's at first he was, you know, question marks. You're thinking, well, really, he's no Coots, and everyone's saying he's not going to be a Paul Coots. No. But the last sort of few games, you need 10, 15 games. Yeah. And that's wisely, I think, what Chris Wilder's done. He's sort of giving him a nice run, and he's getting better every match.
He was fantastic against Derby.
Correct, absolutely.
Really
best player on the pitch in a red and white shirt.
Are his better performances coming away from home, do you think?
Possibly. I mean, he came up against Huddleston and
which says a lot for his character.
And a couple of others.
Correct.
Yeah. And looked like the best central midfielder on the pitch in the weekend, in the last game, so on Monday. So I think that says a lot.
I think the criticism he got early on was extremely harsh. You know, people making judgments so early.
It was people more comparing him to Coots and saying, is he the right man? Can he do what Coots did? You know, drop back and sort of spread it about.
Still playing that role.
He is, and you know what as well. To add to that, he scores the odd goal, which Coots. Yeah, he has done. He scored, I think, 4 or 5 goals in a Blade shirt. But Lundstrom's chipped in. He scored at Forest. I know they lost at Forest, but he's starting to chip in with a couple of goals, and that's another thing that Wilder was trying to encourage Paul Coots to do.
Yeah. What do you think, John? I'm sorry.
I'm going to reserve judgment till next Friday.
Yeah, you're thinking,
absolutely.
Can I last a minute and 20 seconds because I need to blow my nose?
Let's get a prediction from John for next Friday. If everything stays as it is.
I can't predict that, can I? It's going to be, you know, a tough and a derby. How do you predict a derby? Yeah. You know, that's I suppose that's the one thing that Sheffield Wednesday fans will be hanging on to is that, you know what, it's a derby and anything can happen.
Yeah.
Right. So what are you predicting then?
I'm going to do an Alan Biggs. I'm going to sit on the fence.
What about Mr. Staton over there?
Listen, I've got about 7 phone-ins to do before now in the derby. I am not giving a prediction, and my Twitter feed gets enough stick without that, diving into that. So
I'm tempted to give a prediction, but it's too tempting to predict the obvious, and the obvious is often not what will happen in a Sheffield derby, is it?
There's no obvious in a derby, though, is there? You know, there is. No. You know, on the day.
So much can change in a week.
You could have the manager by then. So. Yeah.
So going into the last one, who would have said?
Oh, well,
4-2, and it could have been 6.
Yeah, indeed. Chaps, thanks very much indeed. That hour has flown. It'll be on my YouTube channel later if you missed. Also a repeat here at 11 o'clock. Thank you, James.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Rob. And thank you, John. And to you for watching. See you next week. Bye.